Hello there, folks, and welcome to the second edition of Swiss and Cooper Review. I'm assuming that's what we called it the last time. It's hard to tell. It was a few years ago, but for any of you with long memories, a while back, me and you had discussed Thor: Love and Thunder here on the channel, hadn't we?
Yeah, we did. I'm not sure if the video is still up when you let's see, resetted your channel and all that stuff. I'm sure you have the recording somewhere, but
Oh, yes. My it's in the Swiss vault, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's there. It's just not publicly available. But you know what? Actually, after this stream, I'll go back and dig it out, and I'll make that one available for people to watch, so they can.
Yeah.
I don't know, for context, if they like.
Yeah. But I remember the first time we did it was your first attempt of you trying to do stuff outside of political discussions, which is another reason why I suggested this. Well, granted, Captain America is technically a political thriller franchise, so let's see, sort of leaving it, but at the same time, different than the usual polls, local elections that we talk about.
True, yeah. And it's quite fitting actually, because in the past week or two, I've been making another sort of deliberate attempt to branch out a little bit, but like you say, as it usually goes with the channel, what's that phrase? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. It's like, as much as I try and move on to doing stuff, I always end up reverting back to mainly politics focused for a few months at a time before I then go back in the other direction. Yeah, so in a nutshell, back when we did Thor: Love and Thunder, I had seen it at the cinema, and I was aghast at how bad I thought it was. And generally, I just thought it wasn't a very well put together film. That it was kind of stupid. That there was lots of tone mixing in it, and just stuff that didn't really seem to make sense. I can't for the life of me remember what scores we gave that one out of 10. I'm just kind of anchoring us with what we rated Thor: Love and Thunder for us getting into.
I think I was a bit more positive at the time. Though I think I'll probably be more around maybe 6 out of 10.
Yes, I think probably you were about 6 out of 10 for Love and Thunder. I was probably a 3 or a 3.5, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got our baseline of what we thought of Love and Thunder anyway. So before we get onto the film, then let's just have a quick word about the Marvel Cinematic Universe in general. I'd assume that we're probably both of the same opinion that it's not quite what it was after sort of Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah. I think it's definitely had some problems. That, let's see, partly I think some of the reasons, I think, was one of them was COVID. One of them, I think, was Chadwick Boseman, who was like Black Panther, passed away. So I think the guy they plan to have as the main center point for the multiverse saga, if you will, at least one of the characters that would be the central figures in the multiverse saga, was sort of gone. And another one is that the initial bad guy they set up, let's see, Kang the Conqueror, let's see, his actor got of a scandal, I think, of domestic abuse or something, and as a result, he was removed, and they've had to cut that and sort of replace him with Doctor Doom, or at least a version of Doctor Doom portrayed by Robert Downey Jr., which also the fact that the MCU has been a bit chaotic and not really seems like there's a connected narrative like with the Infinity Saga with the Stones, at the very least, with all these different types of multiverse stories, which remain consistent, I guess, for the saga for the most part, but none of it really seems to attach together, and it seems like a mostly, for some people, glorified fan service of Marvel properties outside the MCU.
Yeah. I mean, you've touched on a lot of points there, and I would certainly agree. I think them trying to set up Kang the Conqueror, and obviously, Jonathan Majors then being removed from any further films, that kind of shot what they'd been attempting to build up until that point. But to be honest, actually, even at the time of Kang the Conqueror still being around, even when what was the name of it? Quantum Mania, the one
Yeah.
with Ant-Man and Kang. Even back when that film was there and Kang the Conqueror was still on the playing field, I'd say that a lot of the film releases still felt a bit, like you were saying, kind of narratively incoherent with one another. You know,
Yeah.
that it was some of these films that were coming out were very hard to tie together or to imagine existing in the same world, or just felt off or different, I
Yeah.
guess you could say as well.
It seemed like they went overboard with a lot of the humor for a lot of people, I believe. And granted, I think this is more of like a general problem of Hollywood with like forcing CGI work artists to overwork and as a result overuse it and may have caused some of the effects. Though granted, I am a strong defender of ritzy CGI because I ritzy got tired of hearing like practical effects argument when Star Wars did that like 24/7 back in the 2010s. But yeah.
Just quickly there, sorry, just because you've mentioned CGI, I feel obligated to bring up the example from Thor: Love and Thunder of probably
Yeah.
the worst CGI I ever saw in a Marvel film, which was
Yeah.
I forgot the name of the character. He was the guy's son, who
It's
appeared to Thor in a
Heimdall's
little bit.
son, I believe, right?
Heimdall's son, yeah, that was it. And this was just, I felt like that bad CGI kind of was quite a nice visual example of how I felt about that bad film, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But obviously, depending on which film it is that you're watching, your mileage when it comes to CGI will vary. They're not all as bad as that particular bit of Love and Thunder, but certainly some people do. I don't mind things being CGI heavy or CGI reliant necessarily. I just, if they are using lots of CGI though, I just kind of want it to blend fairly seamlessly into what it is that I'm watching.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know it's CGI because you know there are things that can't be done with practical effects, but you don't want to necessarily be jarringly reminded of that as you're watching it.
Yeah. That's why some say Dead Man's Chest still has like the best CGI ever with like Davy Jones.
Yeah, no, exactly. I've seen that in a few video essays on YouTube actually, and they make a fair point, considering that was 20 odd years ago now. It stands up pretty well compared to other CGI from that time period.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to take a quick comment we've got in the chat here from Frank, directed at us. Says, "Hello again, Swiss. Should I go back and watch the earlier stream, or is it not necessary?" Well, it's not necessary for this stream. This is a standalone this is a standalone stream about the Captain America film from this year. The previous stream was about opinion polls, basically. But if you're interested in that, then go check that one out. But of course, don't leave us now, Frank. Stay here with me and Mr. Cooper for the time being.
Yeah.
All right then. So let's bring us to Brave New World then. So the Captain America that we had previously, the Chris Evans one,
Steve Rogers.
Steve Rogers, that was it. The Steve Rogers Captain America ceased to be Captain America after the events of the last two Avengers films, so he was replaced. Now's probably a good time, I guess, if you want to give us a little bit of lore or a little bit of a plot synopsis, kind of what leads into this film, what happens in this film.
Well, in a sense, this film is sort of a tie-in to both Captain America and, well, the Incredible Hulk. Let's see, after like a decade or so sequel, if you will, indirectly. But for the Captain America stuff, it follows the events of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier after Endgame, where Falcon was basically not really wanting to become the next Captain America because he didn't think that he wanted that kind of responsibility or something along the lines of that, or thinks he wasn't.
I'm sorry to interrupt you so quickly, but you mentioned Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Am I right? You're referencing one of the Disney Marvel
series.
TV shows? Yeah,
the Disney Plus series. Yeah,
is that required viewing sort of for better? Do you think that the film stands on its own legs without having seen the Disney Plus show, or do you think it's kind of required viewing to understand parts of it?
I think you would get a better idea of the relationship with Sam Wilson and Isaiah, the character that is the main motivating point for Sam Wilson at the very least. Other than that, Not necessarily, from what I can tell, but it doesn't really feel like, since most of the characters didn't see that were in that film, didn't in that series, didn't really show up in this movie except maybe a cameo or two. But yeah, basically, after all, they didn't see after that twist reveal of Sharon Carter's great niece being underworld crook. She's not in this at all, but spoilers, I suppose. But yeah, but basically, he was against the idea of becoming the next Captain America, but the US government decided to get one of their own soldiers to become the new Captain America. Meanwhile, you've got these terrorists called the Flag Smashers who have taken Super Soldier, which is based off of one from an unknown Captain America to the public, Isaiah, a black African soldier who was experimented on by the American government, and this is loosely based off of one of the most iconic Captain America comics of that sort of history where blacks were sort of experimented, given drugs with false pretense of what it was in the 70s up to I don't know, the 1930s or something. I can't recall what it was necessarily.
I'd say not explicitly, but I know that there's certainly an undercurrent of racism towards black people that's ran through the United States from its inception. So, sort of the further back in history you go, perhaps some of the worst and more questionable things could happen as a result of it. But I don't know precisely what you're talking about. But
yeah, it's I believe it's the story. Oh yeah, Truth, Red, White, and Black, in which I think it's loosely based on the foot of the Tuskegee study. I think it was. Where they the US put I think disease is in 400 African American men. It's sort of one of the most well-known modern Captain America stories, but basically.
Sorry, just to be clear, then, are we referencing something? Is this a Captain America story that was based on history, or is it just a Captain America story?
It's a Captain America story. The Isaac stuff is based on a Captain America comic book that's based off actual events in real life, but instead of the disease, super serum soldier. So let's see. Wilson learns all about this. He has some arguments with Bucky about whether or not to take the role. He has issues clashing with the new Captain America and his partner, Battlestar or something. Eventually, the conflict gets Battlestar killed. The new Cap taking super soldier serum while Bucky and Wilson are getting help from Zemo to find these Flag Smashers. He gets enraged, kills someone in broad public with the Captain America shield, which was a bit of a controversy in itself, depending on right-wing commentators saying that capture was justified. But it was you killed someone in public in rather brutal, cold murder, really. It's you shouldn't be doing that with the shield kind of thing. So he got discharged, but eventually had some sort of redemption and became a sort of US agent, while Sam embraced his role as the next Captain America, and him and Bucky finally started being friends. There's some stuff I'm leaving out, but generally that was it. Other than that, let's see, this film is also sort of a long, indirect sequel of The Incredible Hulk, in which Thunderbolt Ross has now become the president, and the main antagonist is what in the comics referred to as the leader, sort of that scientist that Bruce Banner came to help try and get rid of his gamma cure, but during the resulting chaos of the abomination, he got some gamma energy planted in his brain, and it was teased to become the leader in the next Hulk movie, but I think due to some sort of issue with Universal Studios, who own the rights or something for The Incredible Hulk, there's never been a Hulk sequel, and at the most part, it seems like they sort of ignored that, besides maybe introducing Thunderbolt Ross in Civil War, and then later the two Avengers movies where he's a bit of a minor antagonist against the Avengers, if you will.
But Harrison Ford wasn't Thunderbolt Ross in the earlier films, though.
No, it was. Hold on, let me just. I think the actor's name was Thunderbolt Ross.
Because I think I'm picturing Thunderbolt Ross from those films. Was he sort of old dude, little bit slender, short hair, maybe a
Yeah,
moustache or something.
yeah, the moustache, which is naturally what the character. Yeah, William
Yeah.
Hurt, who unfortunately passed away, I think, in 2022.
Oh,
So they
right.
had to,
Okay. Okay.
so they had to sort of recast him, and they picked Harrison Ford. So yeah,
See, this is oh dear. A couple of things I need to say. And first of all, I'll just address a comment we've got from Chris the Clown in the chat. Says, "Hello, Swiss and Mr. Cooper. Can I join? I want to talk about Captain America." Sadly, this is an exclusive club of two for this stream discussing
but
it. But you're
feel
welcome to
free to
share.
comment.
Yeah, you're welcome to share your thoughts. Yes. Yeah, just on the Incredible Hulk film, because obviously they recast the Hulk into Mark Ruffalo by the time they got to the Avengers.
Yeah,
I think I've probably only seen that Incredible Hulk film once, and it was quite a few years ago. And in rewatching Marvel films, I've never bothered going back to it because I know that Mark Ruffalo's not in it, and it just seems like a bit of a continuity thing. You know, it's a bit strange to go and watch one where it's all the other films I know it's a different actor playing it. So I've not bothered going back over those really. So I don't have whatever sort of like continuations or references there are to that original Hulk film. I probably will have missed most of those just because I've not seen so much of that Hulk film, and the same thing actually. What was a bit jarring was that recast with Harrison Ford and the lack of the moustache, because I don't think it was I don't think it was super clear to me when I was watching it. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention that he was the same character that the Avengers had been encountering in previous films. I got the sense that this Harrison Ford guy was someone that they were aware of that existed within their universe until then, because in the way that they spoke to one another. But it hadn't clicked in my mind there. Oh, this is supposed to be the moustache military guy from before.
yeah.
Yeah.
They made a joke trying to explain, like, we're having him have a scene with one mustache, but they had from one of his controversies when asking questions. But they made a joke saying that it was either get rid of the mustache or lose the election, if you will, because apparently nowadays.
See, I remember that joke. I remember that line of dialogue and that joke, and I just thought it was a reference to like I don't know the original character being famous for a moustache, but not.
Oh yeah,
I never clocked it was that guy with the moustache from the previous films. I just thought,
yeah.
oh, they're acknowledging to the fans that they've changed the appearance of this character. But
yeah. So yeah, I think it's just a way to explain. And I guess Harrison Ford refused to get a moustache or something. But who knows? Maybe it might be that U.S. presidents who have moustaches can no longer be elected.
I mean, we've not had a US president with a moustache in about, oh God, like 80, 90 years or something.
Yeah.
I can't think of one.
I mean, the only one I can remember being famous for a moustache is Theodore Roosevelt or something. But yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking Roosevelt. I think Taft had a moustache, but I'm really stretching back in time for that. Yeah, so certainly not post-war, and maybe not for a decade or two before that either. All right, so we've gotten to talking about Harrison Ford, so this is probably a good time to say what we think of him in the role. Obviously, you had a bit more prior knowledge going into this. You were connecting dots that I wasn't when you were watching this, because I was a little bit adrift, kind of not knowing who everyone was in relation to the earlier films necessarily. But nonetheless, watching it, I did instantly go, oh, it's Harrison Ford. I know Harrison Ford. He's been in list number of Harrison Ford movies,
Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner.
Exactly, yeah. So I'd say that whenever Harrison Ford was on screen, it had my attention, if not simply for the fact I was going, Harrison Ford is on screen. I'm going to listen to what Harrison Ford is saying in the most simple kind of way.
Yeah, I will admit, when I first saw the trailer with Harrison Ford, I did at first was like, wait, is this Thaddeus Ross or not? But he's playing Thaddeus Ross and all that. But yeah, which I was down for, though. I did think maybe this is too different of a casting from like the previous character. I did see. Granted, the only time they've had to, besides Mark Ruffalo, they had to also replace like War Machine from like the first Iron Man movie and the second one with Don Cheadle.
That was it. Yeah. They've done a bit of it. I mean, I suppose when you've got a film series that's been running for 17 years now, it's only to be expected you end up getting a few recastings here and there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So what did you think of Harrison Ford in the role?
I think he did a good job with what he was given. I think. Let's see, might not be his best performance, but let's see. But at the very least, I think he gave the best he could of like a president trying to hold his like career together and like going a bit unstable there, if you will. But yeah, I think he did a decent enough job. I think he was regarded as one of the highlights of the film, at least from critics, at the very least. That even though most of them were not exactly happy with the film.
And then what about the flip side? What about the new Captain America? Mackie? What's the name of the actor?
Anthony Mackie, aka
Anthony
the
Mackie.
Falcon, aka. To be honest, I've basically accepted that he's Captain America for a while now. Let's see, granted, I thought he did a good job for the most part in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I thought that show was good until maybe like the last episode where I think they kind of just mostly just focused on action and just rushed every other sort of subplot they had, in the sense, if you will. So, yeah, I thought he was. I think he was doing the best he could with what he was given as well, but.
I'll ask you this one, because again, me and you are coming at this from slightly different vantage points. You've seen the Disney Plus show about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I haven't. So when I'm looking at him in this film, I'm comparing it to the other big release films that I've seen that have had his character in it. When you're looking at it, you're thinking about this Disney Plus show, which has had loads of episodes of him going and doing stuff with the Winter Soldier. So
yeah,
so specifically for you, then, do you feel that his characterization in this film, what it was that he was doing, the way that he was doing it, did you feel that was an authentic continuation of the character that you've seen already from, say, the Disney Plus series and the previous Marvel films?
definitely with the stuff with Isaiah. I do feel like they rehashed some of his stuff about you're not Steve Rogers, or whether or not he should have taken the super serum soldier stuff. But I felt they sort of rehashed that a bit.
I suppose that was probably for the benefit of viewers like me, who hadn't seen the Disney Plus show. So then this whole debate around inheriting the Captain America title and do you become super or not in the process, blah blah blah. I guess it makes more sense that they'd try and paste some of that stuff into the film for the sake of people like me who haven't seen the Disney Plus series.
Mm-hmm.
But for me at least, I kind of it was recognizable enough. It was like, oh yeah, I know you, the Falcon, yeah, and here you are now taking up the mantle. Okay, fair enough. I think I need to try to launch into my main sort of the main crux of my criticism of this movie, really, John.
Okay.
Thor: Love and Thunder. I thought it was stupid. I thought that some of the jokes didn't land. Some of the tone shifts too campy. I think some of the tone shifts are a bit nonsensical. You were going from a plot line where a character has cancer one minute to screaming goats the next minute. It just felt like an absolute hot mess. Brave New World, for the most part, I found it kind of boring, to be honest. Is that sort of the impression you got from it, or did you enjoy it more than I did? For me, at least, I really didn't find it. Maybe it was because you had a recast character in Harrison Ford, a relatively minor character in the Falcon now taking up the helm of the film. Maybe because of that, it felt somewhat lower stakes to me than other films with more established people in the role. But for me, at least, in terms of sort of the dialogue, the pacing, it just felt a little bit dull to me.
Well, I will admit, I had fun when I watched it. Let's see, I knew in advance that a lot of people were already sort of giving this film poor reviews or trashing it. Some even trashing the film before it came out, which seems to be a bit of a problem Marvel has right now, where there are just these group of people, particularly on YouTube. I think that might be YouTube algorithm not helping in that situation, because I think I had talked about they're now in competition with movies now, but I heard that they're like you got people like that sort of trashing the film. So and I ended up enjoying it more. It wasn't as bad as I thought people were making it out to be, but it's definitely not the best Captain America film, and it's definitely because to me, like the Captain America movies are like the gold standard of the MCU, particularly the ones done by the Russo brothers, The Winter Soldier and Civil War, with Winter Soldier being my favorite MCU movie, and arguably the movie that made me the Captain America fan in like watching them as going from Iron Man to Captain America, if you will. So I have a very standard. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say I'd agree with you. Thinking about all three of the Captain America films before this, obviously you got the original one, his origin story, World War II, and everything. Solid, good enough. Winter Soldier, I mean, yeah, can't give that one enough praise. And then Civil War, it had a few flaws for me, but whenever I think of Civil War, all I ever really think of is that airport scene where all the different heroes are fighting one another, which is just lots of fun, you know?
Yeah.
But it's hard in a way to make a new Captain America film without the Chris Evans, Steve Rogers Captain America. It feels as if you're trying to it's a bit like, have you ever watched House of Cards?
No, but
I'll explain that. So House of Cards, it was Kevin Spacey played an ambitious politician called Frank Underwood who would go on to become president, and he'd sort of do narrations to camera about all of his devious schemes and all sorts of things like that. And that went on for a few seasons, and it was pretty damn good. And then obviously you had all the scandals and stuff about Kevin Spacey being accused by lots of people of doing lots of inappropriate things, and Netflix dropped him. And in order to finish the House of Cards series, they commissioned a final season, and they basically killed Frank Underwood off screen prior to the start of it, and then the entire final season followed Claire Underwood instead, and introduced a bunch of other little plot threads and characters that had never really existed in any of the previous series, but suddenly was relevant to this one. And it felt jarring. It felt like you were watching something that was kind of wearing the skin of its previous incarnation, but wasn't quite either up to the quality or feeling as tightly narratively connected. And maybe that's the parallel I'd draw with this film.
Yeah, I think I know a similar thing I could compare. It's like when 2.5 Men, you had Charlie Sheen fired, and then they had to replace him with Ashton Kutcher.
Exactly.
Let's see, which let's see. Well, I suppose there might have been some good stuff. It's just like not the same show without like Charlie Sheen, who was like the central character of that franchise.
Here's a question. I know we're deviating slightly as a quick thought experiment. Can you think of any TV shows or film franchises that have done that kind of a pivot successfully, where they've got rid of like a main cast member or changed up a fundamental element of the show's characters, but actually it's worked?
I think you could argue maybe Mission Impossible movies are based off a TV show, right?
No, you know what? I've never seen a Mission Impossible movie, honestly.
Okay.
But carry on by all means. Yeah.
I think there was like the TV show had like its main the character that was like guarded the leaders of the group replaced after the first season with this new one, and I think it lasted quite a few seasons from my understanding. Yeah, I just know that, but so I think it was like arguably a successful TV show because they eventually did movies. I do know that the first movie had like the main character that replaced the main character for the first season as the bad guy in the film, and which caused a bit of controversy with fans of the TV show and the actors who played in it, because it's like it feels like a disrespect to like the TV show, despite regardless of how people felt about the Mission Impossible movies being good or not afterwards. But yeah, I think that is one example. I guess you could argue Doctor Who, in a sense, is probably.
I was wondering which one of us would mention Doctor Who first.
Yeah. Because technically you replace the Doctor, the same character is like you have someone else playing him every couple of years and all that stuff, because you've given him the ability to regenerate and all that stuff, and that was like arguably one of the main focal points that made the sci-fi series so iconic.
Yeah, and here was me. I was about to say, but them regenerating him and changing showrunners and companions and all the rest of it. That's baked into the DNA of the show. But of course, at the time that they first did it, switching William Hartnell out for Patrick Troughton, that was completely new to the show. Before that, it was just a regular kind of thing where it's like, yes, here's our characters, here's our actors, this is the show. And then they introduced that shift of, oh no, every now and then we're going to change who plays the Doctor. And obviously that is one of the absolute long-running staples of that show now. It's, you couldn't imagine it any other way. So I guess that is a very good example of where that kind of thing has worked. But also because they changed the casting, they sort of wrapped the change of casting into the overall fabric of the story as well. That the Doctor has this ability to change faces, and therefore you can expect him to get a new one every few years.
Yeah, and which only way you see the show ending is if Doctor Who gets cancelled, which it did once, but
it did once. It might again. You never know. Okay, so what did you think of the action sequences in this film? Because obviously it's it's part people talking and being very serious about political things. It's part CGI fights and all the rest of it. What did you think of sort of like the action stuff?
I thought it was fine. I don't think it was as good as the standard Captain American action you get with Steve Rogers, but I think that's because Sam Wilson doesn't have the super serum soldier thing, so he can't.
It's a tricky super soldier serum. That's the
super soldier serum. So he can't necessarily fight like you used to Steve Rogers fighting, if you will. So
does that make the stakes more intense? Do you think in the action sequences though? Like, does it?
In some ways, it does, because it's like because it's like if he's in like direct hand-to-hand combat, for example, when he was up against that Serpent Society guy, and when it's sort of like the car scene, if you remember, he didn't have a suit on, so it's like, and he doesn't have the serum, so it's like he's more vulnerable to be getting killed. So and stuff like that works. And with the suit, they use a bit more Wakandan technology to like do some sort of more tech-savvy things. So that works. I think the only time when it doesn't work is when you get him to fight an opponent like that is Hulk level, which was teased throughout the Bitsy marketing, is the fact that Bitsy Thaddeus Ross would become the Red Hulk, which is the stuff that happens in the comics. And heck, in the comics, you also get Betty Ross becoming the Red She-Hulk, if you will. But that's all kinds of like let's see, comic lore. I don't think we have time to explain, but
I think this is probably a good time to make a confession to you, John.
Yeah.
Which was that when I was originally watching this film the other weekend, and this is probably telling of how engaged I was with this film, because I did say that I was finding it a little bit boring. I actually fell asleep before Harrison Ford transformed into the Red Hulk. I then had to the next day go watch, because I had no desire at that point to return to watching the rest of the film. So what I did was I went onto YouTube and I watched like the fight sequence between like him and Red Hulk, just so I could have seen it and have known what happened in that bit, But yeah, that is my but what I wanted to do really is when that happened, I kind of thought, I feel like it would be more authentic for me to come to this review and say to you, hey, look, it wasn't even keeping my attention enough to keep me awake the entire time.
Okay,
probably a bit telling about what I thought of Captain America: Brave New World.
But I definitely say the whole Red Hulk stuff kind of gave like basically spoilers of like what would be the climax of the film. Now, granted, any one comic book fan would probably guess that Thaddeus Ross would become the Red Hulk, but if they kept it out of this film, they could have been like, is he going to become Red Hulk in this film or not? I think that could have worked to the film's advantage. I guess they wanted to sell as many Red Hulk toys as possible, I think. But
I think the problem is it would have made such a brilliant twist reveal watching the film if you didn't already know there was going to be Red Hulk in it, because then you'd suddenly be like, oh my god, Harrison Ford has turned to the Red Hulk. But obviously, quite a few Marvel films in the last few years haven't been doing too good at the cinema compared to sort of their run in the 2010s. They need that unique selling point to get butts in seats to go see it, and there's no way they couldn't put this big golden goose in front of everyone and say, hey, look, there's a Red Hulk in it. Isn't that cool?
Oh yeah. But yeah, that is arguably one of the problems. But I think one of the biggest problems, I think, let's see, of course, Wilson fighting the Red Hulk without the super serum is like, you can't really expect him to do the more harder punches. And when it seems like he survives certain attacks, you're wondering, like, okay, how's this possible? Granted, I think I've heard that some people think if they just gave, like, Sam Wilson, like, sort of that Wakanda herb thing for the Black Panther, that could be like an alternative to the super soldier thing besides the Wakandan tech, which I think would be a bit more fitting for us, like a black-themed hero who doesn't want to take the super soldier serum because of what happened to Isaiah Bradley, who was experimented on.
Do you think, though, that there's a little element of what is it they call it, like head canon to it, though, where like viewers are having to fill in the gaps themselves as to explain feasibly why they're seeing what's on the screen makes sense, because the film itself is not doing a very consistent job at either making things feel realistic or adhering to their own sense of power levels and who should be hurt by what attack and blah blah blah.
I think there's usually that sort of suspense of disbelief. Now, normally Marvel, I think, does a good job of like doing that, but I think for some people, Red Hulk versus Captain America, Sam Wilson version was a bit too much.
Yeah, I get. I mean, it's a difficult one in the way because I'm trying to separate out two different thoughts. On the one hand, I think it is a thing in Marvel films anyway, even if you don't have super serum, that most characters are able to sustain ridiculous levels of punishment and have things happen to them physically that really they shouldn't be surviving or getting up from. You've got loads of characters that aren't necessarily super in terms of having some mutation or power or anything, but just they're really highly trained or they've got good tech or blah blah blah. And in those cases, sometimes they end up a little bit more unscathed in certain situations than they ought to be.
I mean, the best example I can think of is Black Widow running away from an angry Hulk from like the first Avengers film, but it's like Hulk probably should have catched up to her quite quickly. And that's like that cool Hulk versus Thor moment. So I think you can sort of forgive that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hulk versus Thor is fine because it's like, Thor is literally a god from another realm. I'm perfectly fine with the idea that Thor can get battered around by Hulk and still be standing. That makes sense within the fiction that they're creating. But it's a little bit different when it's just like a human man, a relatively regular human man, somewhat physically fit. He's got a bit of technology, but also a human man.
Yeah, which is why I think you had some saying, okay, if you couldn't have the super soldier serum, why not have the Wakandan herb thing that gives Black Panther his strength or something? I think that's why there was stuff like that. But who knows? Maybe they might do that in the upcoming Avengers movies, but who knows? But there's that. But let's see. I mean, if it was Steve Rogers maybe fighting Red Hulk, I guess you could kind of buy it at the very least, just because the super soldier serum, or at least you would expect him to survive at least.
Yeah, because you'd see them, you'd sort of intrinsically think of them both as more equally matched. Like the Hulk's incredibly strong, but also Steve Rogers is incredibly strong and sort of very, they've both got that kind of thing going for them in different ways.
Arguably, of course, Hulk is arguably, of course, stronger. The two strongest Avengers in terms of raw strength would be Thor and let's see, Hulk. I guess you could also add Captain Marvel to that. But yeah, those are like the ones you expect to be physically the strongest. But yeah, with like power wise, you'd think maybe Doctor Strange or Scarlet Witch, if you will. But
Oh yeah. Well, this is the thing. I think if you say if you're going to have a different fight and it was like Doctor Strange versus the Hulk, either
Mhm.
green or red variations, take your pick. Um, in that situation, I'd imagine Doctor Strange absolutely walking it. Like as long as the Hulk hasn't managed to get the first hit on him, like grab him and start battering him before he can do any fancy spells or anything.
Oh
As
yeah.
long as Strange is a few feet away and can get in some spells, I
Mhm.
think Strange absolutely walks that fight, no question, because
Oh yeah.
he's because the Hulk is physically strong, but there's nothing else going for him really apart from being physically strong.
Mhm. But yeah, another thing I'd say is like it feels like maybe you could, if like for some reason or not, they could have brought in like the actual Hulk into this film and have him react to like the leader and like Theodore Ross being like president, because it's like these are characters from his storyline. I mean, granted, yes, Sam Wilson has some history with Theodore Ross due to Civil War and then Infinity War, but it's like you probably should have had Mark Ruffalo come up in it. I'm not sure if this is because of some Universal Studio thing or that prevents the Hulk from interacting with these characters or not, but it does feel like you could have had maybe him play some sort of a role and maybe even be the muscle for the Hulk fight at the very least.
I think maybe the film would have benefited from having at least one of the other sort of still existing big players in the Marvel cinematic universe popping up.
Because the film did sort of tease with like Theodore Ross wanting Ritzy Wilson to bring back the Avengers, which arguably is probably one of the other problems with the MCU is that, well, not necessarily the Avengers being gone, but there's not like that one film where you get all the sort of group of people together to do some sort of like event movie, which I think should have happened at the end of Phase 4 at the very least. Let's see. It didn't have to be like Avengers. It could be something else. Maybe Quantum Mania should have been like a bunch of Avengers and Ant-Man fighting Kang the Conqueror just to establish that sort of level of threat. But it's sort of like, it feels like some of these villains is like are way beyond what the heroes are doing with these MCU films. Let's see.
Where do you want to go from here in the discussion? Do you want to sort of summarize any further thoughts on the film? Do you want to move on to? Yeah, go on then.
See, well, basically the film. Let's see. I suppose we should have gone with the story sooner, but basically, Theodore Ross has become president, replacing the one that was president from Secret Invasion. Which I'll tell you this, Swiss. The ending of that series was the worst thing I've ever seen Marvel do.
Now this was the Disney Plus show with Samuel L. Jackson, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I also didn't. But actually, it's probably quicker if I tell you which Disney Plus shows I have seen.
Okay.
From Marvel. I've seen season 1 of Loki.
Yeah.
And I've seen season 1 of What If.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I've seen.
Those are arguably the good ones, as well as season 2 of Loki, I say. But WandaVision also, and apparently Agatha Christian is, but I haven't really watched it. But Secret Invasion was interesting, but then became absolute garbage at the end. It's like the most anticlimactic fight thing ever. And it's like left a lot of open-end stuff. It's like, how's the MCU going to follow this up? Which they haven't, by the way, but they seem to just replace the president, I guess. But so he's president now. Sam is currently fighting like the Serpent Society in the beginning with his new Falcon partner. He gets invited to the White House. But he brings along his mentor figure, Isaiah Bradley, who was mistreated when he should have been like the next Captain America, technically, because of like what happened to him. But he was a bit reluctant to because of his own history with like the White House, especially with Ross. But they go there and they meet some of the world leaders, like the Japan Prime Minister. They're seemingly discussing like a trade deal with which he share with adamantium that was found in that Eternal's God that was turned to stone before he could fully emerge from the earth. Have you seen Eternals? Or?
No.
But no, but it's arguably it's many people regard as Marvel's first sort of flop or first true failure, as critics gave it negative reviews. The first movie to do so.
I've post Endgame. I've only seen a handful of the Marvel movie releases. To be honest, I think
Okay.
hearing bad reviews of some of them and watching Thor: Love and Thunder sort of soured me on watching like every new Marvel film as it came out. Instead, I sort of thought, okay, the ones that I feel like I'm most interested in seeing, I'll watch.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
So what I've seen of sort of I've seen the Spider-Man No Way Home. I've seen Thor: Love and Thunder. I've seen Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I've seen this one, Brave New World, most of it, half of it.
Okay. Have you seen Guardians 3?
Oh yes, and Guardians 3 I thought was really good.
Oh yeah, that is regarded as one of the better films, especially in Phase 5.
Yeah.
And there's also, of course, Deadpool Wolverine. I'm not sure have you seen that?
Yes, okay, and Deadpool Wolverine. Yeah. So I've done my best to try and select Marvel films for myself in the past 5 or 6 years that I actually think I'm going to enjoy watching, and usually I pick correctly.
Okay.
Because I thought Deadpool and Wolverine was lots of fun. I thought Guardians 3 possibly was the best one of the three of them. It was I thought that one was really good as well. And obviously Spider-Man was a lot of fun. It was a bit of a fan servicey film, but it was fun.
Yeah.
But basically I think most of the films that I'm enjoying watching these days I'm describing as fun, which is my way of saying they probably do have flaws to them, but I don't care because there are things in it I think are cool. That's probably the way I use the word fun.
But basically they're discussing a trade thing with Antimantium, but a few people in the White House, including Isaiah Bradley, gets mind controlled and tries to assassinate the president. This causes a fallout between he gets arrested and is sentenced to death, which gets Sam Wilson to try and save him, but it also causes America to fall out with Japan and a few other countries. Let's see, Sam Wilson to fall out with the president, who was trying to build a new relationship, I guess, if you will, the Avengers, but no, that was cancelled. And Wilson decides to go along, but Harrison Ford sends this one character, a sort of former from the Black Widow thing from like Black Widow program, same as Scarlett Johansson. I think her name is Leela. Yeah, Leela. No. Ruth Bat-Sierra, but which this character caused a bit of controversy because she is, I think, loosely based off of the Marvel's one Israeli character, and I even say that she's from Israel. From in the film, which, as you can probably tell, the current political climax right now. With it's a bit controversial to have a character from I guess Israel in your movies, if you will.
I mean, I don't of its own accord have an issue with there being a character who is Israeli, as long as that character is not murdering any Palestinian civilians in the movie. But what a person's ethnicity is, I'm not gonna have qualms.
Yeah, arguably, no, it didn't really play a role in the film, to be fair, but. Of course, there is just bad timing with what's going on with political climate, and that's partly why I think the Snow White film kind of bombed, because you got the person playing Snow White being pro-Palestine, and the sort of stepmother being Gail Gadget, who was from Israel and all that. So that
I wasn't aware of any of this. All I knew about the Snow White film is that some people didn't like the casting, and there was controversy over the fact that the dwarves were CGI instead of real life actors.
Yeah.
That would have, you know what? I would have gone out of my way to watch the Snow White movie if there had been a subplot in it where Snow White was pro-Palestine and the evil stepmother was pro-Israel, and there was a little bit of political turmoil under the surface.
Yeah. Well, it's on Disney.
That would have been an interesting take on Snow White.
Yeah, but it's on Disney Plus now. If you want to watch it, though, I'm not sure you enjoy it.
Oh no. I think that would have missed.
But yeah, you've got that sort of controversy. Granted, there's also another controversy where I think Anthony Mackie said something about Captain America not necessarily being the US government or agreeing with the president or something, where I think you got right-wing commentators being boo, 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 not being pro-America. But Let's see, but
Yeah.
it's that kind of controversy, unfortunately, happened. Even though Captain America has a history of disagreeing with the U.S. authority when he thinks they're in the wrong, if you will. Heck, you see that with like the Winter Soldier and Civil War, actually. So
Yeah, I mean, Captain America obviously usually works with the American government, but he's not a, or at least he's not supposed to be. He's not a tool of the American government.
yeah,
He's Captain America. He
yeah.
stands up for America and American values, even if the leaders of the country aren't doing it at the time.
Yeah, this whole film is literally Captain America disagreeing with the president, basically. But yeah, they go try and prove Isaiah Bradley's innocence. They eventually encounter the leader. You reveal that his plan is to get a war between America and Japan, if you will. After Japan thinks America staged like the the stealing of their vibranium, nearly leads to like a all-out war, but Captain America, Wilson, Falcon, and the new Black Widow thing managed to prevent it from going on. But at the same time, you learn that the leaders placed some sort of drugs in for President Ross. Eventually, he gets to his conference.
I was going to say, I think this is where I'm beginning to get a little bit hazy with my recollection of it. So I probably nodded off somewhere around this.
Yeah, well, the Falcon got knocked out from like the plane fighting and all that. But you had a bit of a Bucky cameo, who he's now apparently a member of Congress, giving a pep talk to Wilson. Then you get like Ross trying to explain himself, and then the leader exposes him for like some of the stuff that he did, and then also he turns into the Red Hulk, goes on a rampage, and Wilson fights him, but calms him down, reminding him of his daughter, which is a bit of a recurring thing about here, where he's trying to mend his relationship with his daughter and all that. But he eventually steps down as president. His vibranium thing at least passes, and he gets a touching reunion with his daughter. And then the leader's thrown away, implying a bit more bigger society of Ritzy field at play in like the post-credit scenes. While
I was going to say that this was probably what I meant to ask you then, because obviously I went back and watched the sequence between Falcon, Captain America, and the Red Hulk. But what I wasn't ultimately clear on then was what the final resolution of the movie was. So where is the Marvel universe now at the end of Brave New World? What's our new setting leading us into the next few films? And one imagines, is it next year the Avengers film is meant to come out,
yeah, I think there might have been some delays, but yeah, he's teasing of like, I think it's the Secret Wars or Doomsday thing, which it's supposed to be out in 2026, but I'm not sure if there's any delays to it. But that's basically the one with Robert Downey Jr. Though granted, as Doctor Doom, there is also going to be let's see, also the film that followed this one, Thunderbolts, is also tying into the upcoming events for like that with like Ritzy with that. But also you've got the Fantastic Four film that's also coming out in July, which that one will be the start of Phase 6, and Thunderbolts is the end of Phase 5.
Yeah. Okay, but so that was my main question, I guess. Were there any little Easter eggs or things at the end of this film that sort of suggested where the direction of the Phase 6 might be headed into the Avengers?
I think the leader was just implying an incoming invasion or something, but it's a bit too vague that you might not quite understand unless maybe you've been following the MCU very strongly, I guess. But
I've been taking a pick and mix approach for the past few years, based on vibes.
But but I think he's implying that they're going to be doing like the sort of Secret War kind of thing. Now, the original Secret War was a sort of heroes and villains were taken from the Marvel comics at the time and battle out to determine who was the best and all that stuff. It's actually the storyline that introduced Spider-Man's symbiote black suit actually in the comics, but which was originally done as a tie into like the sort of marketing phase thing. But then years later, Marvel in 2015, they did a new Secret Wars, which was similar to like DC's Infinite Crisis, where they had like all their universes mashing together, fighting it out for survival. And let's see, a lot of certain characters ended up dying as a result, like Barry Allen and the original Supergirl, I think, sort of resetting the DC comics, if you will.
This is getting a little bit comic heavy for my knowledge, but I am at least somewhat aware of the idea of Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths, where it is like crossovers between different universes. And
I think they're doing that version of Secret Wars for like the movies rather than the initially original one, which arguably they probably can't really do because they killed off a lot of their villains.
Okay, Mr. Cooper, I feel this is an appropriate time to ask you, because we've now sort of chronologically reached the end of the film narratively. Would you like to summarize your thoughts on the film and give us a score out of 10?
I enjoyed it, but it definitely was the weakest of the Captain America movies. And in fact, they seem to be trying to rehash a lot of what happened with Winter Soldier in this one, because it's like everyone loves Winter Soldier, so it's like do it sort of like again, but less interesting, because it's like you've got like the sort of Captain America, Falcon, and even the Black Widow trio that you did with like that let's see, character, I think, what was her name, Ruth Bar Sephiroth, if you will. That was sort of like a trio of like you got from the Winter Soldier, so that was like that. I thought it was good. I thought it was like at least you at least might have had fun at least watching the action scenes, though you apparently fall to sleep from it, so I could be wrong on that, but I can definitely feel like
I saw the action scenes from earlier in the film, just not the climactic action scene at the end.
Yeah, but I thought it was like okay, but I definitely feel like there was some very odd choices they did. Like particularly the conflict between America and Japan, it feels like they wouldn't really be in that kind of open conflict, at least. I mean, I'm not sure now with like what's going on with like US is destroying its soft power, if you will, but
yeah, I mean, instinctively, I'd say surely you'd make it about trying to create a conflict between America and China. That would make more sense, kind of plot-wise, and more true to life. But then, of course, I guess you need to consider that they want to release the film over in China. And probably if they were going to try and release the film over in China, they wouldn't get away with having a major plot beats where America and China are trying to be forced to go to war with one another. So maybe that makes sense why they picked Japan for that reason.
Probably, though. Granted, I think it's a Trump threatening to ban, I think, foreign films, let's see, from coming into like America or something like that. At least,
yeah. I think Trump he doesn't want he wants like all films made in America. He doesn't want going off with production companies in other countries and all that sort of stuff. He's trying to bring it.
Which I think China's retaliated by saying they're going to ban all American films coming from their studios, and which is a bigger blow for Hollywood, because China is like the biggest market outside the US. If you will. In fact, some films have managed to survive thanks to like the box office in China, if you will.
I mean, they even make tweaks to some of the films or add in additional scenes sometimes for the sake of the Chinese audience.
Oh yeah, and some of it's been a bit controversial because let's see, they got in The Force Awakens they removed Finn from the poster because apparently Chinese people don't like black people.
Black doesn't sell in China.
Yeah, and also they sort of edited the Black Panther poster.
Well, there's no getting away from black people in Black Panther.
Yeah,
for the Chinese release. I don't know what they can do about that one.
I think it's also why Captain America movies always had like these sort of like subtitles, like The First Avenger, The Winter Soldier, Civil War, Brave New World, so that movies that are very anti-American can they can just market it as that sort of title instead in those countries, like Russia apparently. But yeah, granted.
But do you think also, obviously, it's probably to distinguish the films as opposed to just calling it Captain America, Captain America 2, Captain America 3, Captain America 4,
arguably that probably also helps as well. Now, interesting enough, I think the highest grossing film this year is a Chinese animated sequel film called Nisha 2, which has made 2.2 billion and 212 million at the box office.
I'll take that Minecraft movie.
Yeah, it's like it's literally the highest grossing film of the year, and I think it's become like one of the top 5 highest grossing films of all time and all that. And it's the first non-American film to go to not, I guess, counting James Bond or Harry Potter, but I guess they're partly made by Americans to gross over $1 billion or even $2 billion for that matter. So
Wow,
yeah,
a sign of things to come, I imagine, though.
Yeah, so it's like you're probably going to get more, let's see, China-dominated films at the very least. But
I realised, by the way, that we completely deviated from your thoughts on the film there.
Yeah, so I'm going to get back, but yeah,
that was me as well. Yeah. So please, yeah, your
I thought like the whole Captain America, the Japan versus America conflict was a bit off, but I can probably see the marketing reasons why they did that. Although it might have been perhaps maybe better if they just invented a new country to be more hostile for that, like sometimes Marvel and DC do. But yeah, you could have done that.
You know what? They could have done like South Korea. Oh no, I suppose you need a country that's got. No, never mind. I'm interrupting you again. Carry on.
Yeah, I thought that was an odd choice. I enjoyed I thought that Isaiah Bradley stuff was good from following up from the film, though granted I do wish he got a bit more screen time. I do think that no matter how you spin it, having Hulk villains in a Captain America movie feels a bit odd when you've like when these two feel like, let's see, Red Hulk and the leader should be more personal to, like, Bruce Banner and all that stuff. Let's see, I guess you could. I like the Steve. I guess I like the Bucky cameo, but I wonder if it would have been better if he was in the film by itself, because the Falcon and Winter Soldier sort of set up the relationship, if you will, of like being co-workers, but it's like it's not even being done. But that's because the Winter Soldier is going in to be in the Thunderbolts, so that sort of happened there at the very least. So I think that's an unfortunate casualty. I thought the Falcon was okay, but I don't know. I guess let's see. I don't think he's like going to be anyone's favorite. The Black Widow, I think he could have, felt, I don't know, pointless for most of the film. That was that. I like the action scenes, but I definitely say the story, on paper, it sounds good, if you will. Like a new president has been elected at odds with Captain America, and there's a conspiracy of like how he got to be president and all that stuff. But it feels like the film could have needed more bit time to work on the character relationships, and maybe it had some other characters like I said, Bruce Banner in it instead, just to make some of the more conflicts personal. I'm not sure if like Ross should have been semi-redeemed, I guess, at the end, because it's like you've not only seen this guy as an antagonist throughout the Incredible Hulk and the Civil War and Infinity War kind of films, if you will. So it's at best, I think it's a 6 out of 10 movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if you gave it a lower score, to be honest. Okay. I don't.
Is 6 out of 10 your score for this one then?
Yeah.
Okie dokie. So for my thoughts, I think that as far as my engagement with the film went, I think it suffered a little bit for either not having anyone in it who had sort of mainlined their own Marvel film previously, because obviously it was a Captain America film without Steve Rogers. You had the Falcon in it, but the Falcon had never sort of been the primary character of a previous Marvel film, and I'd not seen the Disney Plus show with him in. And then obviously on top of that, your other major ingredients in the mix were either, in the case of the President, someone who had been recast, or just new characters that were introduced within this film. So there was less of an anchor for me with this movie, even though it was sort of very much saying, this is a continuation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's playing with familiar elements already. It's a Captain America movie. It felt more disconnected from other
Yeah.
films I've seen already in the way that they tied in. There are a few little things there that were
Did you know that before, let's see, Falcon became Captain America, people expected Bucky to become the next Captain America, like it happened in the comics at one point, and also the fact that Bucky had been signed to do a bunch of contracts, but apparently Marvel enjoyed the Captain America Bucky dynamic, so they figured, all right, we'll have the Falcon become Captain America because he also becomes Captain America in the comics. But granted, that was all kinds of controversies in itself. But let's see, the standard cultural stuff. But yeah, but I definitely say I feel like they definitely rehashed a lot of stuff that you kind of had already with like let's see, the Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I feel like if that was more of a proper direct sequel of like having more characters from that show appear in this film, you could have had the Serpent Society as the main antagonist instead of the Hulk villains, and maybe have like Peggy Carter's great niece, US agent, all those characters set up in the Falcon Winter Soldier in this. You might have had a more, coherent movie, I guess, but I don't know. Go on with your thoughts a bit more.
Yeah. So I'd say obviously there was that I said a moment ago. So I'm trying to tell whether I struggled to find it as engaging because of those reasons I just laid out, how different it felt from other stuff that had come before, or how somewhat lower stakes it was, or whether actually just compared to other Marvel films, which are very good at, gripping you in and making you care about the plot of the movie, and scene by scene by scene, you're actually interested in everything that you're seeing. This one did lag in certain areas here and there. That's what I'm trying to figure out, whether it was part of one or part of the other, whether it was a personal taste of mine or whether it was just the nature of the film itself. What I will say in favor of it, it was better than Thor: Love and Thunder in terms of being tonally consistent, in terms of making relative amounts of sense within its own movie.
I think that's due to the fact that you've got, like, since it's a political thriller, it's a bit more serious with the standard Marvel jokes coming up there and then, but you don't have like the jokes for the most part. I guess you could say interrupt the film's more serious moments, I guess.
Yeah. So even though I wasn't necessarily like super engaged by the film, at least I wasn't sitting there thinking this is terrible, this is stupid. I wasn't really having any of that. It was more of a sort of like a shrug of the shoulders than me kind of getting personally outraged that But I suppose the difference was Thor: Love and Thunder, I actually paid money to go see that in the cinema.
Yeah.
That was one of the first films that I've gone, I feel like I need a refund for going and seeing this. But yeah, so rating out of 10 then, I've got to give it more than Thor: Love and Thunder. That straight up needs to be a thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10, which is a fair score from me.
Yeah.
Slightly charitable, but yeah, 5 out of 10 I'll give this one.
I definitely say it had its moments, but it felt like in some ways it was playing too safe. And also like also not enough to like make it more engaging compared to like the the original Captain America trilogy. I mean,
yeah.
but this is like the third, fourth film in like Marvel's franchise. So only Endgame being like the actual decent, let's see, fourth film, with, I guess you could say, Thor: Love and Thunder being for most people bad. And I guess even this Captain America movie, or at least okay at best.
My final review in a nutshell then, if viewers have been paying attention to our stream so far, is Captain America: Brave New World, more of a House of Cards or a Two and a Half Men than a well-made Doctor Who. There we are.
Fair enough, but yeah. Anyway,
right. Well, I think that has us wrapped up in that case. Then, I will say, as much as I haven't been paying as close attention to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the last few years, and I do think the overall quality and coherence has dipped a little bit, I am still looking forward to the Avengers. I still want to see what it's like. I want to see whether they can pull it out of the bag. I'm excited to see the return of some characters that I've not seen in a while, and indeed
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. as well. So,
Mm.
I'm not poo pooing the two Avengers films we're getting before they come out.
Yeah.
I want to. I will absolutely give them a chance, and I want them to be good.
Enough. At the very least, I would recommend watching maybe Thunderbolts because it does tie into like Avengers stuff, if you will.
I've
I
heard
won't
good
say,
things. I've heard good things about it. I've
yeah.
heard that it's quite good.
It's interesting because Phase 5, the way I've seen it, you've had 6 movies, which is standard for, I guess, a phase for Marvel, I guess. Normally, you've had Quantum Mania, Quantum Mania Phase 5, Quantum Mania, this one, and what was the other film I'm trying to think of that was in it? Oh yeah, The Marvels. Most people regard those films as bad, I guess. And then you've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Deadpool, Wolverine, and the Thunderbolts as being the good ones. So it's like 3 good ones, 3 bad ones, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose that's the thing. Compared to phases 1, 2, 3, etc., where more often than not you were getting just they weren't all the most amazing films in the world, but even the lesser ones were still solid.
Yeah.
Whereas these ones, you get films that are really good, and then films that are just kind of dog shit. and
Yeah.
it seems to be sort of crazily pivoting between them film from film.
Yeah.
But there we are. Just quickly, we had a comment from Dr. Zayas who said Marvel needs Howard the Duck. Who would win in a fight between Howard the Duck and Captain America?
I don't know enough information about Howard the Duck to comment about his powers. I know he's a bit of a more cartoon zany character from Marvel and all that, so that might give him an edge in some regards. But
I know he cameoed in
the Guardians films,
film? Yeah.
You see him post credits of like the first Guardians, and you see him a bit of a minor character in the Guardians 3, particularly when you've got like that little subplot of like that one dude that was part of the Ravagers arguing with that Cosmo, that talking dog, about being called a bad dog, and he's like, "Oh, stop arguing about this already."
Remind me quickly, because I've forgotten. Did Howard the Duck end up as one of the new Guardians at the end of Guardians 3?
No.
What's the word? I'm Mandela affecting that in or something.
Yeah.
In my head, I was trying to imagine, because I know that scene at the end of Guardians 3 where like it's. I mean, I haven't seen the film since I saw it in the cinema, where sort of they're all on that planet and Rocket Raccoon's playing them the music that Joel used to play, and I'm in my head, I'm trying to picture all of the new people who are in the Guardians, and for some reason my brain was going, yeah, and Howard the Duck was in there as well. But yeah, I'm imagining that.
Well, to be fair, most of the characters are barely itsy and sort of new ones, so I think it's or at least minor characters. So I think it might be hard to remember them besides Rocket and Groot.
That was it. Yeah. So I don't have an answer on who would win a fight between Howard the Duck and Captain America. I'd imagine Captain America might just edge it. Although, of course, if we were going to get into a deeper discussion, we'd be saying, is it Captain America with super soldier serum? Is it a regular human man Captain America? Is this a...
The only other thing I know is that there's a Howard the Duck film that was actually Marvel's first movie based on Marvel Comics that was done by George Lucas in the 80s, and it was a live action adaptation. It's regarded as one of the worst films of all time.
Yes, and I imagine probably rightly so. Although I think it's one of them films that has a weird sort of cult following.
Yeah.
In the
it does.
I mean, I don't think Howard... I think as much as Howard the Duck was a Marvel character, I'm not sure if Howard the Duck had any specified superpowers. I don't know. Have you got any awareness of Howard the Duck having any superpowers or anything?
As far as I can tell, no, not really. He's more of a power-early character that can sometimes can annoy some of the other Marvel characters, from what I can tell.
He's sort of like a comic relief entity.
Yeah,
really,
I think from like a parallel world kind of thing. But Yeah, arguably, the only thing I know is that many people thought that How the Duck film should have been animated, which I think it was originally going to be too, but I think George had like a contract with the studio that that he needed to do another live action film. And he thought he killed two birds with one stone in that, but clearly that was a mistake.
Okay then. John, perhaps we will return again to discuss another Marvel film at some point. I suspect the next one that I'm probably going to want to chat about will be the Avengers film when it ends up coming out.
No, I would recommend maybe watch Thunderbolts when it comes out on Disney Plus.
Yeah. I given that I've actually heard that it's quite good, I will give that a shot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alrighty then. Well, that being that, then we will bid farewell to the dear viewers, and I will say thank you very much, Mr. John Cooper, for joining me for our second review into Marvel. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll review a Marvel film that I like, because
okay.
I do like some of them.
Oh no! If you want, maybe we could do a DC film. I mean, Superman's coming out in July.
Oh yeah. I mean, I usually well. No, I generally trust James Gunn to be good at these things. He's done good things in the past. The thing that I just remembered when I was about to say that is that was the precise reasoning that I applied to being excited that Russell T Davies was coming back as showrunner for Doctor Who, because he was really good in the past. But that didn't quite pan out the way I'd hoped.
Etsy, I suppose we might also need to do a discussion on Doctor Who's latest season.
Oh, Doctor Who, what happened? Anyway, that is it. Thank you very much, dear viewers. Thank you, John. Drop us a like if you've enjoyed. Catch you all later on.
Bye, everyone.